It was supposed to be just another night. Music pulsing through the walls, laughter echoing in narrow hallways, solo cups clinking against each other, filled with cheap soda and cheaper vodka. The city lights blinked through rain-speared windows, casting a bluish hue over the crowded apartment. Alex stood by the glass, tall and calm in his gray t-shirt and dark jeans, his dark hair slightly tousled. He looked casual, composed, a guy who belonged, or at least he had thought so. The party was hosted by one of their mutual friends, a regular hangout for their tight-knit university circle. Everyone knew everyone, or claimed to. Alex had just finished a conversation with Mike and turned toward the kitchen to refill his drink when he noticed her. Lorraine, the ever-flawless queen bee of their social group. She looked stunning as always. Black dress, perfect makeup, every strand of hair in place. Her smile turned heads, but Alex knew better than to trust its sweetness. That smile could disarm and destroy in equal measure. Then it happened. She was in the center of the living room now, voice raised just enough to hush the room. "I trusted you, Alex," she said, her lower lip trembling like a well-rehearsed act. "I told you things in confidence, and you told everyone. You exposed everything." The music cut mid-beat. Silence flooded the room. Alex froze, every eye turning to him, his brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "You told Mike and Sophie and who knows who else, my father, the abortion, the panic attacks. Was that all a joke to you?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Lauren's voice cracked perfectly as she added, "You are the one person I thought I could trust." A few people rushed to comfort her. Sophie shot Alex a confused glare. Mike looked stunned. "I didn't," Alex finally muttered, but no one was listening. Lorraine wiped away a tear that hadn't yet fallen and leaned into Sophie, whispering something that made her gasp. And just like that, the room shifted. Whispers spread like fire. People looked away from Alex as he moved. He wasn't just being ignored, he was being erased. The party carried on, but now there was a coldness trailing him, like smoke after a fire. He felt eyes on his back, fake smiles barely hiding suspicion. Even his closest friends didn't meet his gaze. Lorraine's performance had been perfect, and he knew this wasn't just a burst of emotion. It was planned, calculated. She had set him up, and she had done it in public for maximum effect. Alex stepped out onto the rainy balcony, heart pounding. He wasn't just humiliated, he was accused of betrayal. But he hadn't done it. He hadn't said a word to anyone. Which meant only one thing. She lied, and he was going to prove it. The next morning, Alex lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of the night before. Laurent's voice still echoed in his ears, soft enough to seem vulnerable, sharp enough to cut. The betrayal wasn't just in her words, it was in the way everyone believed them without question. No one had even asked for his side. He grabbed his phone, opened his messages, and scrolled through the last few weeks. Nothing, no leaks, no oversharing. The secrets she accused him of spilling, he hadn't even spoken them aloud, much less typed them. In fact, the only place any of it existed was in her chats with him. That's when it hit him. If the story she told was based on things he'd only ever read from her, then how could it be his betrayal? He opened their old conversations. The message thread was still there, her texts about her father, her therapy sessions, even a line about her missing class because of anxiety, all untouched. He stared at one in particular. "I've never told anyone else this, just you." And yet now she claimed he had told everyone. His fingers trembled as he took screenshots, methodically, deliberately, organizing the messages by topic, date, and tone. A case was forming, not just emotionally, but like evidence in a trial, because that's what this was now, a social execution, and he wasn't going down without a fight. Still, screenshots alone might not be enough. If Lorraine had gone to the trouble of faking a breakdown in front of a crowd, who's to say she hadn't faked more? Alex remembered Sophie's reaction at the party. Surprised, but not hostile. If anyone might be open to hearing the truth, it would be her. He texted, "Alex, can we talk? Just us. I need to show you something." A minute passed. 2. Then, Sophie, not sure, people are upset, Alex. Alex, I know, that's why you need to see this. Sophie, fine, Cafe Verona, 3 p.m., you've got 15 minutes. That was enough. Before leaving, he opened Instagram. Loran had posted a selfie that morning, flawless makeup, a cryptic caption. When people show you who they are, believe them. The comments were full of sympathy and heart emojis. Some of the same people who hugged Alex a week ago were now praising her strength and bravery. He threw on a hoodie, stuffed his phone and flash drive into his backpack, and left. Cafe Verona buzzed with quiet afternoon energy. Laptop screens, jazz in the background, soft chatter. Sophie sat by the window, arms crossed, jaw tight, but she was there. Hey, Alex said as he sat down. She didn't respond, just stared. I know what she said, he began, and I know how convincing she is. But everything she told you about me, it's a lie. I didn't betray her, she betrayed me. She gave a half smirk. So you're saying she made it all up for fun? Alex shook his head, not for fun, for control. He slid his phone across the table. Sophie hesitated, then picked it up and scrolled through the screenshots. The texts weren't angry or mocking. They were kind, supportive, thoughtful. The kind of messages a friend sends when someone's struggling. She said you laughed at her anxiety, Sophie murmured. That you told Mike. She made everything up for attention. Did she show you proof? Alex asked. Any screenshots? Audio? Anything at all? Sophie didn't answer right away. No, she just looked so broken and confident in what she was saying. Alex leaned in, voice low. She's playing the victim, Sophie. And she's good at it. But I've got more. I think she's been altering messages, fabricating them. I found some strange inconsistencies in the timestamps on what she showed Mike. Sophie blinked. Are you serious? He nodded. I need your help. I'm not asking you to take my side. Just look at the facts. A long silence stretched between them. Then finally Sophie said, send me everything. If there's more, I'll look. For the first time since the night of the party, Alex allowed himself a breath of relief. The truth had a crack to shine through, but he knew one thing. If Loran was willing to go this far to protect her illusion, she wouldn't stop now. And he'd have to be ready for her next move. By the end of the week, Alex had built a digital fortress. His laptop was open across 3 windows. One held archived chat logs with Loran. Another displayed timestamps from screenshots she'd allegedly shown others, and the third was a running spreadsheet he'd created, cold, clinical, and precise. Each lie was labeled, each manipulation dissected. And the deeper he dug, the clearer it became. Loran hadn't just spread rumors, she'd engineered them. She had sent altered screenshots to Mike with cropped headers, vague timestamps, and fake context. One showed a message from Alex calling her unstable, except he'd never written those words. He'd found the original message. She'd doctored it from. His version was a long, empathetic reply after she told him about a panic attack. It wasn't just deception, it was weaponized trust. That night, Sophie called him. I believe you, she said quietly, and I think Mike is starting to question it too. Did he say something? Not directly, but he's been distant from her, watching her more closely. I think he's realizing she's not who she pretends to be. Alex closed his eyes, letting the words settle like rain on scorched ground. For days, he'd walked around campus as a ghost, avoided, whispered about, treated like a virus. But Sophie's call meant the tides were shifting. Still, he wasn't done. He remembered a conversation weeks ago, late at night in the dorm lounge, when Loran had let something slip. I keep backups of everything. You never know when someone will try to twist your words. At the time, it had sounded paranoid. Now, it sounded like evidence. If she kept backups, she might have left traces. Alex reached out to Theo, a computer science major and low-key hacker who owed him a favor from sophomore year. Can you help me recover deleted messages? Old cloud storage, maybe? Alex asked. Theo didn't even blink. If she used a syncing app and you have access to one of the connected devices, I can work with that. Alex didn't have access to her phone, but He remembered something even better. During group projects the previous semester, Loran had used the university's shared iMac lab to print documents. It had auto backup software. Theo confirmed it. If she logged into her messaging app from one of those machines and didn't properly sign out, there might be cached data in the local system. The next day they made their move. Theo booted into admin mode, bypassed restrictions, and within an hour, they found fragments, partial logs, enough to prove that Loran had copied messages and edited them before sending. Alex stared at the screen. It was surreal. There were entire message threads she'd rewritten, adjusted word by word, removing her own toxicity and pasting his kindness over with sarcasm and cruelty. It was like watching someone forge your signature on your soul. "We need to be smart about this," Theo said. "If you go public too fast, she'll spin it. You need to control the moment." Alex already had a plan. He waited 2 more days. Then he invited everyone, Sophie, Mike, their wider friend circle, to a movie night at his place. No explanations, just popcorn, drinks, old memories. They came. Loran showed up too, of course, dressed effortlessly, laughing like she'd already won. Her arm looped through Mike's, though he didn't quite meet her eyes. Sophie sat stiffly beside Alex, unsure what she was about to witness. Halfway through the movie, Alex paused the screen and turned on the lights. "I know this is weird," he began, standing in front of the group, "but I need 5 minutes of your time. That's all." People shifted awkwardly. Loran smiled with manufactured confusion. Okay?" Alex picked up the remote and switched the screen to his laptop. The presentation was short, screenshots first, his versions, clean and time-stamped, then the fakes Loran had sent. He highlighted mismatched fonts, inconsistent date formats, metadata that Theo had extracted showing the edits, then the partial logs from the university system, proof. Every eye in the room was on the screen, except Loran's. She was frozen, not pale, not trembling, calculating, her mouth opened, closed. No tears this time, no outbursts. "This doesn't prove anything," she said, finally. Her voice lacked its usual venom. Alex looked at her, calm. "No, Loran, it proves everything." He turned to Mike. "You asked me why I never defended myself. I didn't have to. The truth was always going to catch up to her." Mike stood slowly. "Did you fake all of it, Loran? All of it?" She didn't answer. The silence said more than any lie could. People began standing. Some left the room entirely. Others glanced at Alex, nodding, awkward and guilty. Sophie stayed behind. "She'll try to twist this again," she said. "Let her try," Alex replied. "This time, I'm not alone." The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, Loran's silence had been replaced by frantic whispers. She wasn't denying everything, not outright, but she was shifting blame, painting herself as misunderstood. Her story changed in small, calculated increments. "It was never meant to go that far. I just wanted to protect myself. Alex was acting distant. I thought he was turning people against me." The group chat exploded. Mike removed her from it. Others followed. Instagram stories that once praised her bravery quietly disappeared. Her comments were no longer filled with adoration. Now they were empty, silent, like people were waiting to see which way the wind would blow before choosing a side. But Alex wasn't waiting. He returned to campus that Monday with a quiet confidence. No smugness, no grand gestures, just truth and a hard-earned calm. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. The work had already been done. And the more Loran tried to regain control, the more obvious it became that control had slipped through her perfectly manicured fingers. Still, she wasn't finished. That afternoon, Sophie caught up with him outside the library, her face tense. "She's organizing something." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Organizing what?" "A truth circle, some kind of open forum with people from our group. She says it's to clear the air." He exhaled. "She's doubling down." "Of course she is," Sophie said. "She's not used to losing." The so-called forum happened in a corner room in the student union. couches arranged in a loose circle, fake calmness hanging in the air like a bad scent. Alex arrived late, deliberately. The room was already half full. Lorand was perched in the center, expression carefully curated, vulnerable but not broken. "I'm glad everyone's here," she began, her voice soft but pitched just loud enough to dominate the room. "What happened over the past week has been difficult for all of us. Um, there's been a lot of confusion. Confusion. That was her angle now. Not lies, not malice, just misunderstanding, a tragic, misread situation where she, the fragile girl, had been pushed into exaggeration by emotional distress. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she said, eyes glistening. "Least of all Alex. But I felt cornered. I was scared. And when I saw people turning against me—" "No one turned against you," Sophie cut in sharply. "You manipulated us. You lied. You created chaos and painted yourself the victim." The room stilled. Loran blinked. "I never meant—" "But you did," Alex said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "You forged messages. You framed me. You looked me in the eye after the party and watched me fall apart while everyone believed you." He stepped forward not for drama, but clarity. "If this is your apology, say it. Don't hide it behind vague explanations and emotional smoke. We're not confused, Lauren. We were deceived." Lauren's composure fractured. "You don't get it, Alex. You always had people's respect. You walked into a room and were taken seriously. I had to earn every glance, every compliment. Do you know how exhausting that is?" "So you punished me for being trusted?" he asked. "I needed people to listen to me," she snapped, "to care. And when you started getting close to Sophie, to Mike, I felt like I was disappearing." Sophie's mouth dropped. "That's what this was about?" "It wasn't jealousy," Laurent said quickly. "It was fear. I've been alone before. I can't go back to that." Alex studied her face. There was something human there now, not the cold calculation from before. This was desperation, pure and raw. But it didn't excuse anything. "You didn't just break trust," he said. "You used it like a weapon." Lorraine didn't respond. Her eyes flickered toward Mike, who looked away. And that was it. No applause, no dramatic walkouts, just the quiet weight of truth settling in. People stood one by one and left. Sophie stayed behind, so did Mike. Lorraine remained seated, eyes distant, as if reality had finally caught up with her. When Alex walked out, he didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired, but free. Later that evening, he got a message from an unknown number. It was Sienna, one of Lauren's closest friends from high school. "Sienna, hey, I saw what happened. Just wanted to say thank you for standing up. She did something similar to me once. I didn't have proof back then. You did." Alex read it twice before responding. "Alex, I'm sorry you went through that. I hope you're okay now." "Sienna, I am, and I'm glad you are too." It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. And for the first time in weeks, Alex finally slept through the night. 2 weeks later, campus felt different. The air was lighter. Conversations no longer paused when Alex walked into a room. People no longer glanced away, murmuring half-formed suspicions. Instead, they nodded, said hi. Some even apologized. Quietly, awkwardly, but genuinely. Alex never asked for that. He wasn't trying to clear his name out of pride. He did it because he knew silence lets lies grow, and he'd already watched what that silence had cost him. Now, the silence was finally his again, peaceful this time. He sat at his usual corner table in the campus cafe, typing away on his laptop. Sophie slid into the seat across from him without needing to ask. Their friendship had changed since everything. It was quieter, more honest, real. She sipped her drink and nodded toward the door. She dropped out of 3 classes. Alex didn't ask who she meant. He didn't need to. "Stopped showing up last Thursday," Sophie added. "Mike told me she's considering taking a leave of absence." He stared at the steam rising from his cup. "Did she say why?" "No, but I think she finally realized she doesn't have an audience anymore." Alex didn't feel triumphant. He didn't smile, didn't revel in her downfall. What he felt was far more complex. Relief, maybe. Closure, but also an odd sadness for what could have been. if she'd chosen differently. She was smart, he murmured. Manipulative, yeah, but smart. She could have been something else entirely. Sophie leaned back. Maybe, but she made her choice. And choices had consequences. Later that evening, he found himself walking through the university gardens, the same path he'd taken dozens of times before. Only now, it didn't feel haunted. The weight on his chest was gone. The shadows lifted. Halfway through the path, he spotted Mike sitting alone on a bench, headphones in, eyes scanning something on his phone. Alex hesitated, then walked over. Mike looked up and pulled out one earbud. Hey! Hey! An awkward pause. Then Mike said, I was wrong about you. Alex sat beside him. I get why you believed her. We all wanted to. She made it easy, Mike said bitterly. Too easy. They sat in silence for a moment, watching as a group of freshmen played frisbee across the lawn. You coming to Leo's birthday thing next week? Mike asked eventually. Alex shrugged. If I'm invited. You are, Mike grinned. Sophie made sure of it. It was a small thing, but meaningful. A thread weaving itself back into a circle that had once been torn. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Alex pulled out the flash drive, the one he'd stored all the evidence on. He turned it in his hand, then tossed it into a nearby trash bin without fanfare. It was over. Back at his apartment, his phone buzzed. A new message from Sophie. Sophie, check your email, sent you something. He opened it. It was a link to a short article she'd written for the student paper, When Charisma Becomes Control, Recognizing Social Manipulators in Student Circles. She hadn't named anyone. She didn't have to. The article spoke volumes about patterns, about false narratives, about the importance of critical thinking even among friends. At the bottom, she'd included a short quote from him. The truth doesn't scream, it waits. And when it speaks, it doesn't need to prove anything. Alex smiled. It wasn't just his reputation that had been rebuilt. It was his voice, stronger now, clearer. Lorraine might disappear for a while. Maybe she'd come back, reinvented under another mask. But next time, people would be watching closer. For now, Alex closed his laptop, stepped outside into the night and walked forward. No longer a villain, no longer a victim. Just a young man who'd faced a lie, fought back with truth, and won the right to keep his story his own.